Okay, we are live again. It's 7:30. Let's go ahead and play another inspirational video here. It's about 5 minutes, so we're gonna actually just. Yeah, I've seen that intro before, and
but Metallica's wild ride would soon come crashing to a halt. On September 27th, 1986, the band was traveling the road between Stockholm and Copenhagen.
On that European tour, we had a really bad bus.
These particular buses weren't purpose-built that we have now. They have normal windows like a passenger coach, and the bunks are just bolted in. Then they put cardboard over the windows.
Earlier that night, a friendly dispute between Kirk and Cliff over sleeping arrangement concluded with a draw of cards.
The first card that Cliff picked was the ace of spades, and he looked at me and said, "I want your bunk." And I said, "Fine, take my bunk, I'll sleep up front. That's probably better anyway, Later on that night, about 5 or 6 in the morning, I heard skidding, I heard a vibration, and then this motion. I thought we were going off a cliff.
He overcorrected to get back onto the road, and as he did, the back end came around this way, and it started chomp, chomp, chomp.
It's the sound of screeching brakes and being flipped around like a piece of clothing in a dryer.
Scott woke up and hot coffee get poured all over me, from the coffee machine, and, the bus was on its side.
What happened? Is the bus gonna blow up? I jumped out of the bus and took off. Did the 100-yard dash in about 7 seconds flat.
We're standing out there in our underwear, 10 below.
And I heard everyone screaming except for Cliff. And I thought, oh my God, something's wrong.
Seeing the bus driver just, freaking frantic.
And I turned around and I saw Cliff's legs sticking out from underneath the bus.
I went to, pull him out, wake him up or whatever. It's like, he's not moving.
And the driver walked over and started pulling on the blanket that was underneath the bus next to Cliff. And I said, "What are you doing?"
I grabbed him. Don't you take that away from him. Against all odds, the band hoped that somehow, some way, Cliff could be saved.
A crane turned up, a big crane with a jib and all that, and they hooked a chain around the bus, and they picked the bus up.
There's still people trapped under the bus, but everyone else is okay.
I don't know if Cliff was dead at this point or not, because the bus actually slipped back. After they picked it up, they lifted it to pull him out, and it slipped back and landed again on the floor.
After that, I was in such shock that everything else for the next 3 or 4 hours, I can't even remember.
Kirk and James yelling at the driver.
What did you do? What did you do?
What happened? What's going on? Is this guy drunk or la la la? Oh, we hit some black ice. And I recall in my underwear, and socks, walking for miles, looking for this black ice, walking back on. Where's this black ice? I don't see any black ice. And I wanted to kill this guy. I was gonna end him there. Early Saturday morning, September 27th, 1986, on the road near Ljungby, Sweden, Cliff Burton died. He was 24 years old.
He just got thrown out the window and boom, the bus landed on him. And basically, by all accounts, he never woke up. To this day, I just think, it could have been me. It couldn't have been me, but it's never left me to this day.
You always feel protected on tour. Nothing bad can happen like this. It's not allowed. This is rock and roll, man. Nobody dies, but they do, and it had happened, and it was hard to grasp that.
Drinkers we were. We went back to the hotel, just drank.
I remember at 4 o'clock in the morning, I could hear James down on the street, drunk, screaming, "Cliff, where are you?" And when I heard that, I just broke into tears,
Within hours, news of Cliff's death reached Metallica's fans in America. One such fan was Flotsam and Jetsam bassist Jason Newsted.
I remember tears hitting the newspaper. Killed in Sweden, Metallica bassist Cliff Burton, 24 years old or whatever, and I just lost it.
Lars, James, and Kirk returned to San Francisco to attend the funeral of their friend and bandmate.
Lars took over from then on, and
in all fairness to Lars, without Lars Ulrich, that band wouldn't be where they are today.
Okay. So, a little insight for you guys. Cliff Burton himself was an inspirational figure in the sense because he was one of my favorite bassists of all times. And there was kind of a picture that I recall that I saw of him wearing a cowboy hat, a black cowboy hat. And it kind of got me figuring a little bit because that picture, like, and the name itself felt appropriate because Han Burton, the character, again, was based off of three people. One person in particular, Cliff Burton, who is a real-life hero to me. The other two are fictional heroes. Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2, Han Solo from Star Wars, and of course, in real life, former bassist of Metallica, Cliff Burton. So the idea of that character was the fact that everyone had loved him because of the music that he made, and he was basically someone who I just feel like really touched upon a lot more things, and not just in music, but for other people in terms of art, in terms of stories, in terms of anything that you can pretty much put your mind to something here. And Cliff Burton happens to be inspiration for a lot of people in terms of what people would try to do with such passion with art, music, literature. And I think that's where that also stems from. Cliff Burton is essentially, to me, the real life essence, or pretty much the reality that I like to stem to, because the other two, they're fictional. Yeah, they're purely fictional characters, Han Solo and Arthur Morgan, purely fictional. But I think Burton, for the last name Burton, it stems to that. I mean, I could have went with Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China, but I don't feel like there was any connection I could do with that, because Cliff Burton to me just seems a little bit more. The last name Burton felt appropriate to me. It's just what I feel for that too. So, and Monkey, do you want to join in on story time? Okay, so to recap where we were about 2 hours ago, according to that from part 4, we actually got to the point where, to recap, Han Burton himself was driven to suicide, to attempted suicide by putting a gun into his mouth after realizing everything that he had done, from murdering people, from ruining people's lives, and causing harm to so much others, because that was the way he was raised and he couldn't take it anymore. So he attempted to take his own life by putting a pistol into his mouth, but he couldn't go through with it. And by some means, and you could say this could be a supernatural element into the story. All right, hold on. Monkey, I'm sorry, but I really have to talk to people right now. Okay, hold on one second. But you could say it's a supernatural element into the story. It could be a mixture of things. But at the very moment he decides to go through and try to attempt suicide, he couldn't go through with it. And by that point, rain begins to descend rapidly upon him, because he now confesses everything that he did. He basically opens his own self out completely, from a hardened heart completely out. But then he notices the mysterious Lobo, like he has seen before from the other days. So he decides to chase after this Lobo. It's similar into the ways of how Moses had this discovery of God in that sense. He chases after the wolf. The wolf, however, though, disappears, and he goes into this dream, and then he realizes that this dream he had was basically a heavenly dream and a hellish dream, because it's both a dream and a nightmare. So with that being said, he finally comes to a confrontation between a little bit of his past and himself, in a sense. So he wakes up from his dream and he comes into contact, or he comes into an experience with this rowdy bunch of these 4 drunken assholes, or bandits in a way, and they're maniacal, they're atrocious, they're bad, they're basically bad human beings that you can't even reason with, and they were basically antagonizing the Native Americans that were on this land into these tall trees. One of them had attempted to rape one of the female villagers that were from that tribe. Fortunately, Han Burton decided to take upon himself to, shoot at the bandits, severely injuring them, causing them to flee. Though he had saved the lives of the Native Americans that were living in that land. However, though, he was not seen as trusted. However, though, he was escorted to the village by at least the means of understanding from a person called Faithful Doe and her brother, who happens to be vigilant in this matter, is Swiftwolf Falcon. He's a little bit of a jerk in a sense, but like once you kind of get into the story a little bit more, you get more of an understanding to it. But now he meets a chief called Silverwolf. And now bear those three names in mind, because those three characters are going to be are completely important, especially for Faithful Doe. She's one of the most essential characters with Han Burton, but essentially too, Silverwolf is pretty much that defining essence of person who tries to change a man to being, and this is the key word I said, by the way, because if we recall, this is Lobo, righteous gunslinger of the West, and the line that I said from the last stream, he says in his own words, "But I believe a man like you who has believed he's bad can in fact be a good man of principle, morality, compassion," and then the key word right there, righteousness. So we're going to continue off right now, because now we're going to go into the part of trials. And I think this is one of my favorite parts of the story, because I'm going to show you also a particular scene. If I get across to it, I will show you exactly where I got my inspiration from. It's from God of War, but I want to show you exactly that particular scene if we get to it. So I'm going to continue on. So I'm going to just go about 3 or 4 sentences above. All right. "And to tell you the truth, I believed him, especially how he could read me clearly. And I could tell from the outside that Faithful Doe said a lot of things to him, but nothing about my dark past. Lobo, it is my decision that I have made. I offered you shelter and food for as long as you like. However, if you are to dwell with our people and learn the ways of good and selflessness, you must pass our trials. There are 5 in total. Complete all of them, and you will no longer be an outsider to our people. Instead, you will be the first of many who will gain trust from us, and we will teach you the ways to be better." He walked over to me and politely gave me a great gesture to walk with him outside by the trees, just past over to his tent. "However, if you do not pass our trials, then we will escort you to the nearest town, and you will be on your own from there. Do you accept the terms that I have given you?" I asked him. "Chief Silverwolf, after losing a family, a woman I love, a brother who's possibly dead or gone, and I as myself as well, who nearly ended my own life, I don't think I'm worthy or even worth the time to save. I'm a pathetic and bad man, but I have nothing to lose. I accept these terms." We shook hands, but he held on as I tried to let go, and that is when we looked each other in the eye as he spoke compassionately strong. "It is never too late to seek righteousness, or the selfless act of good that brings just and worthiness. Time will be the change of heart, so do not put yourself in such doubt." And yes, Christopher, by the way, Cliff Burton is in fact the former bassist of Metallica. So yes. I nodded in agreement, and then he let mine go as we walked over to an empty tent. But it turns out this was to be my tent. "This will be your home. Tomorrow you will begin your first 2 trials, but for now you shall rest here. I will have my daughter bring you food, as I fear that my people will look down upon you. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate what you're doing." He nodded slowly before exiting the tent, and as such with being patient. Faithful Doe entered my tent with food, and she had brought my belongings to me, except for my pistol, but I had the money and the gold. We both smiled, but did not say a word, even after she left. But what picture was bigger to me is that the chief himself had such a same mysterious vibe and aura as that Lobo that I kept seeing. That was what I was feeling inside of his tent. Could it be such a coincidence that a mysterious creature would keep me from just a bullet away from my own gun, to where a chief himself who knows exactly who I am or who I was and believes that I can be given redemption from such a horrendous act, and that myself underneath the bad was truly a good man? I doubted it though, but only time itself would determine such a fate. The Lobo I saw howl in the night, and meeting Chief Silverwolf. Being that I was alone to ponder these thoughts, I paved back and forth just thinking about that rainy night and saving his people. It began to click that maybe I can change, or perhaps he was right. It's not too late to atone for my mistakes. I had to do it, not just for Amelia, not just for Fenrir, or Jackie, or for Chief Silverwolf, or his people, but most importantly, for me too. Night approached as I saw through our entrance of my tent that the villagers had gathered around the fire and began celebrating and dancing, giving praise and honoring tradition as they feasted together in peace like a family, giving thanks for those who hold dear to their hearts. I couldn't join because I knew what they would say. You are not welcome here, outsider. I couldn't risk that or a hostile fight, so I stayed in my tent and sat down on the blankets to stare off and think again, until faithful Doe entered into my tent again and sat across from me and began to feast with me, with a satisfying taste of the handmade bread and cooked seasoned meat. Lobo, faithful Doe asked, do you hunger for food? Her politeness gave me reason to join her in feasting, a day of thanks for giving me a chance before the day would give me the baptism of fire. The trials of a reborn man with a reborn heart. I dug in and slowly ate such delicacies. The meat was cooked so differently from our camp in Silver Rock. Only that here it tasted much better with the seasoning that they had. Higher competition in the making with such delicious food. But I couldn't forget the corn that they had also cooked as well. One of God's greatest crops that has ever grown through the riches of the soil. I appreciate the offering of food that you bring, faithful Doe. And I am humbly thankful that you spoke highly of me, even though I feel I don't deserve it. At times, neither do I. Sometimes I even question my own worth. But you have a chance to have a safe refuge for you. Look forward on for tomorrow. The past is only parts farther away with time. Don't dwell on such burdens then. She smiled and continued eating with me until night had grown closer. When we finished our feast, she collected the remnants of cloth and pans, and she had brought and left my tent, but not before wishing me a good night. She was strange in a fascinating way. Morning arrived just at the brink, and I was dead asleep, but awoken all of a sudden when Swift Falcon and 2 of his men entered. Outsider, it is time to wake, time to prove your worth if you are any. I rose immediately to his tone of voice and gave my attention full to his direct and strict methods. Yes, I am awake. Outside, Outlander. You will need to wash clean before we head to the forests. Swift Falcon and his men escorted me to the vacant tent filled with barrels of water. I was left alone inside to clean and scrub myself from all of yesterday's ago. Outsider, Swift Falcon had bawled. Hurry up and clean. Leave your old clothes and hat there. All but your hat will be washed and will be at your tent. You will put on these clothes we have for you. Now hurry up. I finished quickly and grabbed what they had provided for me. Never thought I would be wearing something so different from my usual attire, but I was dressing like one of them. With all haste, I put everything that they had provided for me and stepped out of the tent. This way, outsider. Your trial begins today. Your first trial is just further down the forests. You will light every pyre we have placed before nightfall, all 10 in total scattered throughout in difficult places. Failure to do so will have you banished from our tribe. We walked down for a time into the forest and stopped along a faint path as Swift Falcon took a torch and materials from the back of his horse and handed it to me. This here, outsider, is what you will need to light the pyres. I personally believe you will not get it done. However, you will be left alone to light them, and we will have our own people watch from a distance to make sure you do not commit any fraudulent action. I looked up and directly bowed to the center of my eyes and spoke my oath. I promise you, Swift Falcon, I will do no such thing. He somewhat squinted and with resentment from his eyes. You have until the brink of nightfall to find all 10. Now move, outsider! I walked inside to the green of the emerald color of the trees that flourished and allowed the dim of gold light to descend through. Such peace and quiet was what stood out, but far ahead would seem to leave a man wandering, lost and crazed. 2 hours had passed, looking and turning, but no sign of any pyre that would be anywhere. But as the 3rd hour flew by, I saw the first. Hope grew a bit stronger as I used the materials to light the first one. However, it became that I had felt like an eternity to the afternoon had only transitioned and I was only halfway to finishing. But I was still motivated by my chance of redemption. Every step, every turn, and every breath I used was never to go to waste. But then night was nearly here and falling fast. There was only one left. The colors of the sky were changing, and time was merely limited, but I could not find the last pyre. I kept circling back into places that I had been before, embarrassing enough that I had forgotten that the villagers' eyes were watching from afar. I kept looking, but it all seemed too deeply in vain. No such pyre was anywhere. Every path and every corner of the tree was just as the same. Hope was almost gone, and the wind to blow away. Then as I wandered, I noticed a small hill of rocks that lay beside me, and just beyond into the forest, just above the sharp peak of the rocks, was just the last pyre. My feet charged and I ran up to the top and lit the pyre just before sunset had submitted itself into the night. My first trial was a success, and I was saved by the terrain of a hill that sat next to the forest and not inside. I wasn't sure if this was a trick by Swift Falcon or if there was any catch to the trial, but one thing was clear. I came out victorious. Thank you, by the way, Astro. That was very nice. Thank you. Chris, I love you too. My gosh. Out of my victory, I was greeted by the natives who kept watch over me. You have passed the first trial, outsider. There only remains 4 more to complete. He shook my hand and smiled out of a great deal of respect, but distant from me since my worthiness was still yet to be proven. The second trial came the next day to where I walked with Silverwolf to the edge of a chasm, further up north from the camp, to take in the view that had laid down as prosperous as the land of Israel beyond the river Jordan. He stood and watched the land, and I joined him to hear his teaching. Lobo, please come forth and look at what I see. We stood and watched as the sun stood at grace, where the green meadow was placed in between the mountains and the sea of trees that surrounded the meadow and its clear rivers. From there, we saw the majestic flight of the eagles fly across. Tell me, Lobo, tell me what you see. Observing all I could only see with such little sight, there was the fact that there was more that meets the eyes behind something of land and earth. I see a peaceful valley underneath the rising sun, and the eagles flying across. Silverwolf slightly chuckled in humor, but with more optimism that matched his tone. What you see out before you is more than just the sights of land and water. What we see is sacred blessings given to us through the rivers of water and the rich, nourishing soil that provides such life. The warmth of the sun itself is sacred, just like the wind that whispers in any direction. Why? Because it wasn't man-made. It has its own purpose. It doesn't serve anyone else's selfish purpose, only the true purpose that nature itself bestows. Such sacred elements of the earth that we dwell are not slaves or pawns to one's will. Thank you, by the way, Chris. I actually it was very deep for me to do. Manipulated it can be, but can never be controlled. That is something that I see in you. What is man-made is who are the ones who are unfairly giving you such distaste and inadequacy of the bitter waters of life that you drink from. You too, like the elements, can be manipulated, but never fully controlled. The sins and dire actions that you have carried are all because of the ones who made you like them. But it is you, like any other element, that darkness itself cannot put out. It is a light in every darkness that grants hope and change and a desire to welcome change for the better of one's lost heart. Do you understand my teaching? And I responded, what you are saying is that, like myself, elements that work in such forces of nature that can serve a better purpose than what we as mankind do abuses the sacred giving to earth, embracing a change that will alter me, but maybe granting me a hand of fate, blessed with something new, that despite my horrible deeds, that I can change my ways for the better, and not for just those around me, but for myself in particular. I believe that I can. I looked forward to where the sun gleamed down and shined on the meadow, which gave Silverwolf a moderate, gleeful smile that transfixed to the best of the sun, just as I had answered him, as if my answer was pure and honest. This pleases me. You have passed the second trial of patience. You listened and acknowledged my teaching. Though you have passed, I can only be truly convinced through your actions. We slowly walked away, but even he carried a decent smile before vanishing. The third day had passed for the third trial. Swift Falcon and his men escorted me to the middle of the open plains for my next challenge. Outsider! Swift Falcon exclaimed. You will wander these fields for 24 hours. You will not leave these plains until the time has passed. No food, no water. Hold on one second. I was so caught up, I lost my place. Oh, here we go. You will not leave these plains until the time has passed. No food, no water for you when you collapse. When you collapse, you will collapse until a meaningful dream will come to you. I nodded and said nothing, as I knew the trial was tough, but I was willing to go through it. My men will be watching you, outsider, he spoke sternly. One by one they left, and I was with nothing but to wander. So my third trial had came. But the more I wandered was the more my hunger and thirst became increasingly tempting. Not only the cravings of food made me feel weak, but even my own thoughts became my own thoughts of doubt as my body, over the course of 24 hours, gave out and left me to pass out from exhaustion. But within I began to dream, but dreamt about something that seemed strange, but yet oddly resembling. I looked up to see the figures of myself and Amelia, for whom we were kissing under the night sky. But as the stars had emerged, she began into the darkness up high, and all the specks of her flesh made the moon appear, and my figure turned into the Lobo and howled up to the sky. My cry for her, with the song of the wolf's howl, entered the deepest of my soul. There I saw tiny glowing specks just flying above the wolf. A firefly. It was of Jackie. And just like that, I was awoken by one of the natives who saw me collapsed as he quenched my thirst from the water from his flask that carried. Outsider, the man spoke. The man spoke. What was your dream? I was a wolf, and the love of my life became the moon, and I saw a firefly just above me. It wasn't just a firefly, but a name given to a kid. No, a man I respect. We called him Firefly, but his real name was Jackie Mateer. But I saw myself as the wolf howling at the moon. I still miss the love of my life. The man placed his head on my shoulder and spoke kind words. You have completed your third trial. The dream you tell me is about something of loss and love and respect. You are learning much, friend. That was the first time a native man had called me a friend. The fourth day came next, as the trial had never been done by Swafalcon himself. Bear this one in mind too. The fifth trial is the one I will show you the inspiration for, but I'm getting excited about this part, about the fifth trial, but we're on the fourth trial right now. I would have to climb up to the top of Mount So and retrieve a piece of royal treasure that no villager, native, or any other soldier had ever retrieved. The only thing I could carry was the clothes that I had on, and nothing else. From the bottom, I started on foot and made my way up to multiple paths, which began spiraling around the mountain until I had reached a dead end, still about 5,000 feet above. The only option left was to climb. I grabbed and checked every surface and crack I could ever find and continued up, but more altitude I gained with my ascent up was when more fear began to build, as I was now feeling desperate to hold on. But then I thought of what Silverwolf and Jackie had said to me. Even Jackie himself was teaching me to be better from what I had been teaching him. Amelia, Jackie, Silverwolf, Graceful Doe, and even Swiftful Falcon had saved my life. But most importantly was that God above, who gave these sacred gifts of earth. He led me to these people, and inside he smashed the chains of doubt and the prodigious weight of fear. It was the feeling of bravery and courage to press on. I couldn't let it all fall away, both figuratively and literally. I was climbing for more than just the words could ever describe, but with the unbroken will within my heart was bleeding out for the moment on top of the mountain. I would not submit myself to the fear, that would pressure me or giving me any crap over the time. So I climbed even to the point where I could not even rest my feet. It was all down to the rough and hardened grip of my hands, fighting the aching pain and climbing through the frosted wind. I kept reaching over and over again. I will not fail. I will not fail. I was just a few feet from the top, and at the next grip of the edges, they broke apart, and I spun to the other side where my life was hanging in the balance of my right hand. I struggled and I fought, but my saving grace, I found a hole for my feet to step as the left hand grabbed the other gap, and as I took control yet again, I had finally made it to the top of Mount So, and I saw the treasured necklace that had laid upon the stones of the podium in the middle of the wide-opened peak of the snowy mountain. I placed my hands on the podium just before I examined the necklace, but I took a moment to look over the lands below. With a smile, the victory's reward brought me to stand triumphantly as I yelled out for all to hear, I had made it. I made it. I took the necklace and wore it around my neck and proceeded down. Hours had passed as every native had gathered from the start from my trial to finally witness me slowly walking down from the mountain, carrying the chief's royal necklace, with such a majestic feeling of awe and high honor. The chief shook my hand and was proud to call me something that I would always remember. You, the bold and brave, who stand among me and my people. I am proud to have met a worthy man. You still have one more trial to complete to be fully accepted, but I am astounded that you, of all outsiders, let alone my own people, could reclaim this treasure that no one else could. All of the people, including Faithful Doe, were amazed, but the same could not be said about Swiftful Falcon. He became jealous that I had completed what he could not. I even became the talk of the town to these villagers. They were amazed and they spoke stories about me. Even I couldn't believe what I had done. I handed the necklace to Chief Silverwolf, but out of respect he declined and explained, "You earned this treasure, my friend. You show that you are willing to change and to become truly liberated from the wrong done to you. Keep the necklace as a sign of brotherhood, my friend. Your last trial will come forth tomorrow." We're getting close to one of my favorite parts here. The last trial came on the 5th day. It was the trial of hunting. But what exactly was hunting a learning lesson of or for? Swift Falcon amongst with Silverwolf, Graceful Doe, and 3 other hunters. I was given a bow and a few arrows in the quiver. We all traveled to the forest once again where my first trial had began. I was to hunt a deer with the bucks and to offer it to the villagers. But what lesson was this? I still had no idea. I went west and looked forward to where I felt any presence of deer, as I noticed their tracks just below my feet. Finally, I had found the deer I was looking for, but this deer was no ordinary deer with the standard bucks. This deer had bucks 10 times its size of an ordinary deer. I took my position carefully behind the tree and aimed for the heart. This wasn't like hunting ever before. With arrows, I felt the dire need to focus and shoot more accurately. I closed my eyes and slowly inhaled and exhaled to pause for the moment of the wind blowing in silence. Then, the aim of my bow snaps, the arrow directly into the deer and into the heart, just exactly where I had aimed. The natives had saw and ran towards me as I ran towards the severely wounded animal. Gradually, its strength had given out as it fell onto the ground, struggling to breathe. I stood above just looking at the poor creature crying, its dying breath as the natives gathered around me. I began to feel an ambient sense of sadness as I stood on my knee and saw what I had never seen any deer had done. A tear had broke out from its eyes as it looked into mine. The feeling became strong as I suddenly was reminded of my own heartache when I held my beloved and dying Amelia, the pain I caused Mr. Phyllis to go through, in my attempt to end my own life. Those memories clicked back and connected the dots. I felt for everyone's suffering. The moment I saw the deer's tear fall from its own eye was when I felt the emotion that was so close to my heartache, but a feeling of solace or comfort to the deer. I turned my head as one of the natives had handed me a knife to put into the deer to take out of its misery. So I accepted the blade, and with hesitation from the pain of memories and the heartache to turning to the different moments of regret and mourning into feeling of sadness, yet such a powerful and truthful feeling of gratefulness. It was a feeling of compassion. And with such feeling flowing through my heart and into my bones, I placed the knife into the wound of the deer while comforting its head on top with my other hand, and slowly the deer had slowly faded away to be at one with life on the other side. But not until a tear had emerged from my own eye, as when I looked down and thanked the creature with all respect that came from my heart and spirit. Silver Wolf witnessed the tear that had slowly fallen. He knew that I had fully understood the ways of change, the trials of commitment, patience, will, bravery, and compassion. These were the trials that had changed my heart. These were the trials that I had fulfilled. And even Swiftful Falcon began to understand as he saw the compassion I felt for the deer. And he was finally convinced that I was no longer considered an outsider. From his own words, no one I'd have ever witnessed had come so far and yet has done all that all myself could not complete. Perhaps I was wrong about you. I with my father when I say that you are no longer an outsider. You are a friend to our people, and you are welcome to our tribe, brother. I can understand that. I'll talk to Chris. Don't worry about that. So real quick with you guys. So basically, I'm going to set this down just for the moment. Han Burton went through 5 trials, and these 5 trials weren't just trials of being a part of the tribe or being to seek refuge with the tribe or with the tribe. But these were basically the trials of understanding, basically, as it says, commitment, compassion, will, bravery, as such. The 5th trial is my favorite, is one of my favorite scenes that I've written into my story, particularly because it shows the complete change of a man who actually had done so much bad to people. But as the moment he stuck the blade into the deer, as he took the deer's life in the sense of hunting, but in the sense of compassion, he understood the pain that the deer felt. When he saw the tear come out of the deer's eye, he himself felt that pain. That tear had also fallen out of his eye, and he understood and he felt the compassion for the deer that he had hunted. Now, I want to show you guys something here really quick. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you I wonder where the okay, so I want to show you guys this right here, because this is the heart-touching scene right here. This is exactly where I got this particular scene from, my inspiration for that story.
Relax. Do not think of it as an animal. It is simply a target. Clear your mind. Steady your aim and breathe in. Exhale and release.
My God.
Good.
It's still alive.
Your life. No. Finish what you started.
I can't.
So it was that particular scene right there from God of War where I got the idea to put that particular part into the story. So that's where I got that idea from, and that's gonna fall. I don't want that to fall. It's fallen. So that particular scene from God of War gave me the idea for that particular trial, and I think it shows that the character finally accepts that it's never too late to be a better person. And that's what I love so much, is that, and that also kind of reflects a little bit more like the Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption. That the more, because he was a man who was dying from tuberculosis, and the more he saw himself dying from that, he realized the error of his ways, and he decided to be a better person after that sort of experience. So, hold on one sec. We're going to actually jump back into this in just a moment. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. But see, that is the particular part of an element that I added into that story. And I have to give a lot of thanks for God of War for that too. And that's something that I really hold and cherish. And I think that even brought tears to my eyes when I wrote that. And I fell in love with that scene. So I'm going to read a little bit more because we still got a little bit of time. Okay. Here we go. Swift Eagle, for the first time, was from the first time he was strict and as an intimidating figure of his people, but as it turns out, underneath was a man who didn't know how to trust people outside of his own. We returned to the village, but right prior to my entering the tent, I was stopped by Swift Falcon for a moment, as he handed me my holster and my pistol inside. Since you have earned our trust and mine as well, you may have your weapon back, my friend. I smiled to a new friendship that was granted to me as I retrieved my weapon and placed it with my belongings. We eventually all feasted together underneath the night sky. I myself was no longer restricted from the presence of the natives. They no longer had seen me as such a strange and unusual man, but one who finally understood the value of their ways. Some of the villagers danced in front of the fire in celebration of my trials as a token of initiation to dwell with them, as a part of the Doacat tribe. I knew much, but a much bigger truth that was all higher than that. They were in fact good people. Why would anyone judge the sort because they looked different or lived a different culture of a way of life? It was the common pain and irritation that mankind leaves such a disdainful and stench of unjust and unfair judgment. Only true savages in the world that took pleasure and power from suffering from others were the ones that lived that life. These people that I have been taken in were far from that name. They lived by means of principles and morality. Only violence was used when forced into any situation that bared such a dire threat. The chief and his son and daughter were examples of fine people. Even Swift Falcon was a bit aggressive, but he did it to protect his people from common dangers and aggressions that they had experienced before. Faithful Doe seemed more closer to me in a few days. As for Silverwolf, who was the prime example of a true leader, he knew the real me completely and absolutely well. I didn't believe him at first, but I grew and changed by his examples, but there was much to learn. So the journey is brought forth to me as 4 years had passed. Let me scoot that down a bit. Sorry. I kind of lost my place for a moment. I do apologize. Oh, here we go. As 4 years had passed and I had become officially 30 years of age, my physical appearance had changed over time. My long hair was cut short and slicked back. My facial hair was now into a scruff. My clothes were different, though I kept my original attire with me. But my clothing I bought from a shop from a town that was a few miles from the village. Didn't cost much, which was about $50 total. My hat and my holster with my weapon was the only thing I didn't replace, along with my original attire. I wore a shorter brown jacket with black short-sleeve shirts, with a gray clean vest. A brown lacer boot with brown lacer boots with my black solid dress pants. But I even bought another holster along with some suspenders to attach them. Everything about me was different. In addition to change was new things that I had learned. I learned how to weave and make other types of food, crafting bowls and making my own bullets for my pistol. I was completely made new by a bigger concept of creation. I was happy, content, and living a better, fulfilled life, helping others and tending to the elderly with their medicine and food. Silver Wolf himself, throughout my 4 years, bonded with me, and we became one of my best friends, just like Jackie himself. But with these 4 years, importantly, was when Swift Falcon grew to accept me as a friend, and his untrusting personality began to nourish into a love of a brother that I had never had. I knew deep down that he was a good and honorable man. Then there was Faithful Doe, whose heart grew for me in such a different way than just family love. The more she saw me learn the ways of the Doacat, and the brighter change of my characters when she began growing closer and drawn to me. Her personal feelings took time to flourish through as she was tranquil with life and needed not anything more until the time had brought her to realize she needed another's heart to take the next step into the vast change of life. Together, we rode into the thriving town just a bit from our camp. Took them 4 years to build for what it seems like now. The same amount of time I became a different man was around a long time ago. I had my own new horse as Faithful Doe rode on her own. How long has it been since you have seen a small civilization, Lobo? A long time, Faithful Doe. Such sights and places can really feel different. When you're gone a long time, sometimes you may not even recognize it. So what's the place we're going to? We are going to a small town called Birchington. It's in a way still small, but still slowly building up in business and transportation, though I am uncertain of the hospitality that we may experience. Don't matter what they throw at you in terms of hospitality. I'm here whenever you need it. Faithful Doe took comfort from the concern that she was told from her tribe. So, Faithful Doe, what exactly are we going to Birchington for? She replied, Birchington happens to carry some of the herbs and food we need for our horses, and as for the medicine, bringing you with me will take the ease from such tensity from the local residents, as I'm unsure about their welcome. We continued on and around in a spiral form from a hill, and we noticed the town of Birchington, just beyond the other side of the giant chasm, and together rode down a path and through the bridge that led to the other side as we finally made it to civilization. Go ahead. There we go. And quite on the contrary from what Faithful Doe had suspected, the townspeople didn't mind her, or who she was, or the way she was dressed. Such peace and honest labor was the fruit of their civilization. Discrimination had no shelter in such a pleasant town. We made it, Faithful Doe. The people here don't seem that bad. In fact, it all seems peacefully quiet. Maybe we should come here often. I hitched my horse and got off to get over to Faithful Doe's horse, to be a gentleman and help her off her horse, by offering my hand to her to help her to come down. The moment she took hold, she smiled and stared into my eyes of a man who felt anew about life, but in such a silly awkwardness drew in between as I opened the door to the general store for her to walk in. I'll wait right out here until you get done. If you need anything, just call and I'll come in. She smiled at me for a moment, just before walking in. But for someone like me who even grew to transform to and embrace the second chance of a beautiful life, was when I was reminded of the tragic pain of Amelia. I closed my eyes and tilted my head up and took a deep breath as the wind softly blew, though I was standing in somewhat of a path of town, but I had no idea that Faithful Doe witnessed my hidden pain through my facial expressions from the window of the general store. She paused to observe my body language of regret as I tilted my head down and placed my hand on my chest and my heart. But when I opened my eyes was when I saw a weakened man trying so hard to lift logs to the side of a wood shop just across the street. I walked over to notice his stress and sweat, that he himself was overwhelmed with the heavy labor of his own. Excuse me, sir. Pardon me. I noticed that you seem to have a lot of heavy logs there, son. The man paused and wiped the sweat from his head to catch a breath of word. Indeed I do, sir. For a peaceful town, my own boss doesn't really seem to do anything to help. If you wouldn't mind, I could help you real quick, sir. It's the least I can do, especially with this heat outside. The man smiled and directed, All right, sir, that I would be thankful. I began to lift the logs one after the other, as we were down to the last, as Faithful Doe watched from our horses. The man himself was happy with glee when we finished offloading. It was like a burden taking off of him, and less stress to collect. Thank you, kind sir. I reckon there's not too much people with a kind heart as yours. I smiled and nodded. Thank you, sir. I have to head off, but don't work yourself now to death, you hear? We both waved, but like most upstanding men would, I joined Faithful Doe again. She began feeling a compelling sense of interest, so we wandered around as we were greeted by such fairly and equally, with no thought or impulse of indifference. But as we walked, we noticed over a middle-aged woman, full of anxiety and fleeting hope comforting, who appears to be her son. Excuse me, ma'am. Is your boy okay? No, sir, he is not. I fear he may be ill, she sobbed and poured out. I've been trying to get work along with my husband to feed and support us, but we have nothing. No food, no medicine, and only my son is severely sick. And my only son is severely sick. I wish I could do something quick. If I was to lie down with you, sir, would you kindly spare some money?" My only reaction was somewhat spazzing at her proposition. "Ma'am, I'm not going to do anything like that to such a woman." I could tell she was losing hope in humanity and in the world, that even such a peaceful place. But I would not repeat the sins of my past once again, as I had remembered. The teachings of the Silver Wolf made me come to realize that it would have to come to selfless solutions. I took $2,000 from what I had, and I gave it to her to bring a second chance for her boy. "Please, just take this, ma'am. It will help. It will help. It will help to. Sorry, I butchered this word. It will help you very much to escort down the street." Oh, bless you! Oh, bless you! I'll pay you back every cent." I respectfully shook my head. "No need to do that. It's for a good cause." I carried her son as she and Faithful Doe accompanied me inside as I called for a doctor. "I need medical attention for this boy here." The doctor came out and immediately tended to the boy. "Here, sir, I'll take him from here." I nodded and I walked back out, but not before being thanked by the boy's mother. "Sir, before you go, I can't thank you enough for doing such a thing for my precious little boy. You know this earth is filled with such bad in the world, but it's people like you that bring a blessing and a hope to people. Thank you, kind sir." I smiled and waved and took what she said to heart. It was like inspiration, like music or art that guides me to that perspective. It felt different. It felt human. It felt good. "I appreciate your kind words very much, ma'am. I'll carry them with me. So long, kind stranger." While me and Faithful Doe were about to leave, she kept her eyes magnetized on me for what I had done for the old man and for the worried woman. She wasn't just impressed, but drawn closer like art almost created into a masterpiece. I believe that even she daydreams of me while riding her horse or dreams of me in her sleep. She was another woman who was starting to fall more deeply in love with me. But could she sew up an orphan's broken heart inside and place the broken pieces back together? Because she could sure as well see that deep down that a slumbering pain of lost love was still unstirred, nor giving the emotional freedom that shackles of tragedy. "Let us head back, Lobo," Faithful Doe softly spoke. We eventually rejoined Silver Wolf later on that night for a ceremony for the celebration of his tribe, for the respectful hunt of the animals, and of a great feast of fall. Faithful Doe sat very close to me. I could tell that she was more drawn to me now than ever before, for my heart and my soul. I welcomed every single moment, but my heart still felt the curse of the lover's past. Okay, so real quick. So from the last stream, do you remember this? If any of you guys remember, I played a scene between Moses and Sephirah from the Ten Commandments where they were having their conversation. That is this particular scene that was based off of that, because when Moses actually had that conversation with Sephirah, he's like, I have nothing to offer. I'm still haunted by a broken past. I'm still haunted by the fact that a woman that I love is no longer with me. So it's the same sense with this particular area. So he saw, like, Lobo is starting to feel very drawn to Faithful Doe, but he's still haunted by the fact that he can't let go of the fact that the previous love of his life had been taken away from him, and it's hard. So it's basically, in that sense, a little bit of a trial to go through. Hold on one second. Sorry, there's like loud conversation going downstairs, and I don't like loud conversation when I'm trying to read. So we still got a few minutes before we end it off, and like we have actually gotten through a lot. Like there's not much to go through left, but like we've been going through so much, and I'm really proud of this right now. I'm proud of you all for taking the time to listen. Well, I'm just proud in general. So I'm going to read a little bit more, and then we are going to end it off. We'll just end off on this stream, and we'll probably have about 3 more streams to go, but I think we are doing awesome. Let's see. We celebrated and feasted while smoking around the campfire, the villagers dancing and chanting. It was peaceful and such a horizon that widened for a tone who we saw dim. Me, along with everyone else, dancing and feasting, were happy. But I felt the images of Amelia cloud my heart yet again, and I began to feel the lingering sense of sorrow return. Faithful Doe could see it in my eyes, the pain deep inside that was silently crying out for solace and closure. I couldn't bring myself to numb such pain or to release the obsessional torment inside. I got up and walked into the woods. I had no intention of playing with Doe's heart. However, she was determined to follow me to the woods. Even Silver Wolf, unknown to my knowledge of how I felt about her, yet he welcomed the idea of the same love for two different worlds. I was, in fact, his only one that he initiated to his tribe. I sat alone in the faint dark, looking up at the glowing moon. The howling of the wolf echoed in my mind, suffering. Tears slowly began to flow through until I was seen by Faithful Doe. And she spoke. Pain is such a hard thing to get rid of, and even in such a man who is toughly brute, but yet compassionate and kind. I lowered my head and faintly smiled, slightly looking away to at least hide the tears until she enriched my soul to a comforting glow. I agree. Such time itself can make the difference to such a man or a woman. I just have much to think about all the time. She sat next to me on the log of a cut tree and turned her eyes to me as I turned my head further away. You still love her, don't you? She asked. Yes, because I know that she can never come back, you know. Hold on one second. I apologize. Good moment. Kind of got ruined right there. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read again from that particular part. Let's try that again. Sorry. I turned my head further away, and she spoke to me. You still love her, don't you? She asked. Yes, but I know that she can never come back, you know. She was the one to make this all happen. And sometimes, Lobo, that pain can hurt you deep. Time will eventually heal such a broken heart. I'm sorry, Faithful Doe. I don't think any medicine, herb, riches, or even time itself could heal my broken heart. She then placed her hand slowly on my face to turn my attention deep to the center of her eyes, as she wiped the tears and kept her hand softly placed on me. No, perhaps not, but I wish to give you my heart instead. I felt the blossoms of love again blooming from her words as I placed my right hand softly on her face and spoke softly. Would you heal my broken heart, Faithful Doe? Yes, Lobo. I wish to give you my heart. I love you, Lobo. Slowly our faces met to where we kissed underneath the bright moon. But just above was the sight of the shooting star that flew across. It was another light shining in such darkness. Faithful Doe was now my new shining light, and the one who could make me fully whole again. Weeks had finally passed, as Faithful Doe and I had finally told Silver Wolf of our loving relationship. A leader of such to his own people had never felt such feeling of pride in his daughter, especially for what he had seen in me. Though again I was an outlaw, but now I was a man who was dedicated to enjoying the peace of life, and more months had passed till it was decided that we were both married. Now, I will admit at this part, I really kind of wish that I probably put this like 4 years had passed as I'd done all this, and then like 4 years with Faithful Doe would create a relationship to marriage. That's the only thing I feel that was a little bit awkward about this, which it's in the revised and re-edited version. The more I think about it now, which is still the same thing, but again, this is the 1800s, so things do kind of change. So it was dedicated to enjoying the peace of life, and more months had passed until it was decided that we were both to be married. I remembered in front of all of the villagers, in front of Silverwolf, and in front of Swiftful Falcon. Sorry, me and Faithful Doe joined our hands and kissed in front of a sacred fire burning with such a smell of fragrance of herbs that spread in the air. She was the sun to the rain, my angel pulling me from the bowels of hell. Everlasting that she was the one to make me completely whole again. And as I still loved Amelia respectfully, like the sounds and memories, it slowly faded away. Then until one day the pain and guilt had completely vanished, as I had imagined the sounds of chimes slowly playing to imagine the sound of change. I even remember one morning when I woke next to her after the love that we had made underneath the bright stars, that I couldn't help but look away at her. I kissed her cheek and then walked out of my tent. And that was when I could wake up underneath the beautiful clear sky and warm sun with the majestic view of the plains and mountains. And I could finally breathe full again. My lungs felt no dirt or dust from the filth from where it came. I felt the clear air fill up in me. The feeling was amazing to take in. So that's where I'm going to stop right there at that particular part in that story. So to recap, after Lobo had completed his trials, he had earned the respect, love, and trust from the tribe of the Doa Cats. He earned the respect and love from Swiftful Falcons, Silver Wolf, and Faithful Doe. But as such, not only did Lobo go through a transformation from an outlaw to a man who felt he's a redeemed, compassionate fellow who feels more for others and is willing to help others in need, but now has this growing relationship, who has a new romantic relationship with Faithful Doe, despite the fact that he had lingering, hurtful, and tragic feelings about Amelia, who was tragically taken from him by the hands of Vulture. Despite that, Faithful Doe offered her own loving heart to Lobo. And with that new relationship that they had, they created this new relationship. So an outlaw who felt whole again from this woman, that these two came from two different worlds. A criminal and an ambassador, a peaceful ambassador from a tribe, coming together and thus creating such a peaceful world, in a metaphorical sense, giving Lobo the chance to breathe again. Because from the beginning of the story, it says every day was like breathing in dust to my lungs. And now with this complete change with Lobo and Faithful Doe, he's able to wake up and see a peaceful sun in the distance and feeling the graceful wind, and he's able to breathe completely. He can feel the clean air flowing through him. And it's so symbolic, because it feels like he's completely new and reborn, and he's purged away from the sins that he's committed before. And that's what I love so much about that. But there is yet more to go through, because we still have more of that story to do. So ladies and gentlemen, that has been part 5 of my story stream. So I really am really happy that I got this written out there. So we probably have about maybe 2 or 3 more streams. I'm not entirely sure. We might be able to get it done in about 2 more streams. Maybe. Maybe some miracle, maybe 1. But I'm really happy for this. And I think that it's just so perfect right there. By the way, Professor Winter, I'm not sure if you were around, but I will go ahead and link you one of the inspirations, because I think you may have missed this part. It was one of my favorite parts. The 5th trial that Lobo went through, he basically hunted a deer that actually had the bucks 10 times the size of any deer. When he shot the deer in the heart, he came to that point, and that's basically where the transformation fully began. He was given a knife from one of the villagers, and he was supposed to kill the deer with that knife. But as he was about to do it, he felt the compassion between the deer and himself. He saw the tear flow from the deer's eye. The deer was crying its last tear right before succumbing to death. And as he slowly took the deer's life with that ceremonial blade, he himself actually had shed a tear for that deer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you exactly where I got that inspiration from. And I'm going to link it. Right there. Oh, thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate that. So with that right there, I want to thank you guys for coming out. I'm going to stop my stream right here, and we will continue tomorrow. If there's a chance, we may be able to finish the story tomorrow, or maybe in about 2 days. Because this is in fact a 114-page story, and we've pretty much gotten through like past 100 pages. Well, not 100 pages. We probably got through like about 80 pages. But I want to thank you guys for coming out. Tune in tomorrow, and we will definitely continue on. Thank you guys for coming by, and I hope you guys have a very wonderful night.